Hi, everybody. Welcome to a second season of the Salt City Index. And my name is Mo Moodie, your host. And as you may be aware, we go around Onondaga County and the greater area of Syracuse, and we interview influencers in the area. And I'm very excited to introduce today's guest on our show. Now, before I go into great detail of who this individual is, I'd like to share a funny story that I've met him a couple of times, even throughout my political run and prior to that. And it didn't really sink in until I ran into him at the Board of Elections. And I was like, man, I have to pay attention to this individual because he's a mover and a shaker. And I'm very excited to introduce today Tim Kelly, who is running for State Assembly. So Tim, just say hi to everyone and let everyone know who you are.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Tim Kelly. I'm running for the Assembly of the 127th District, which comprises the towns of Clay, Cicero, Manlius, and in Madison County, the town of Cazenovia.
Awesome. All right. Fantastic. And you're currently running an election that's coming up in November. Super excited to have you on the show. So thank you. So for the people back home, like the voters or the viewers and may not truly know you, can you kind of give like your elevator pitch or just like your background of who you are and why you're qualified for the role?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've lived in Onondaga County my entire life. Grew up in the town of Manlius, attended East Syracuse Manoa High School. Fun little fact about my family, they've lived in the village of Manoa and that surrounding area for 5 generations. And one of the things that I think is pretty cool, my great-great-grandmother, her name was Nellie Remlinger. She was an immigrant from Germany, as was a good part of my family and most of the residents of early Manoa. But because she was a property owner in 1913, she was one of the first women in the United States to vote for the incorporation of the village of Manoa, which was obviously prior to 1917, which women gained the ability to vote in New York State, and then in 1920 for the United States. So it's a proud family fact, and it turns out she was actually a very active political committee member in Onondaga County back in those years. So it's runs deep in my blood. But a little more about me. I live in Fayetteville with my wife and 3 kids. I've been married for 21 years. I have a senior in high school, a sophomore, and a 5th grader. My girls are very active in sports. My son is very talented artistically and also is a tech geek like his father. I went to Syracuse University as well as OCC, where I met my wife. Turned into a hope of wanting to start a career in medicine. Wound up becoming a tech guy, but to get to that point, it required me to really be part of my community. My family has instilled in me since an early age, to be active in the community. And I've been a board member, a soccer coach, a softball coach. I've participated in a number of community organizations, both as a volunteer and on a board level. I've been a volunteer EMT at NAVAC Ambulance in North Syracuse for quite a while now. I've actually been president of the board there for 10 years. One of the busiest volunteer agencies in Onondaga County. We did over 8,000 calls last year. They encompass the entire Cicero North Syracuse school district. And one of the things I think sets me apart for this role, and I know it's probably one of your questions later on, Mo, but my wife and I, when we got married, she was from Liverpool. I was from Kirkville and Manoa. And we decided to kind of settle in the middle between both of our families. So we purchased a house in the town of Cicero. We lived in the town of Cicero up until about 2016 when my family moved back, my brother, my sister, and moved back into the town of Manlius. So we moved back over here to be closer to family. But I have a really extensive experience living in both the town of Cicero, going to church in the town of Clay, being very involved in EMS in the town of Clay. And then living in, the town of Manlius. My roots run deep, and I understand the community that I'm looking to serve.
That's crucial. You know what I mean? Having
Absolutely.
Those deep community ties, actually have like your fingers on the pulse. You know what's going on, like it's instilled in your blood. So thank you for that insight.
Absolutely.
I mean, besides your community ties, including your community ties, you've also have like local involvement, like you were on the town of Manlius zoning board. So like, has that influenced you for running for assembly? Like, is that going to be influential in your campaign?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've been on the town of Manlius zoning board for 5 years. I was chairman of it for 2. I feel that's really given me kind of a deep understanding of just some of the not mundane, but the more simple things, right? That people are looking at in neighborhoods, and having concerns of, okay, hey, I want to put in a pool, or I want to put in an addition on my home. And how does that affect my neighbors? And what do the neighbors think about it? And getting the neighbors involved to be paying attention to what's going on around them, and ensuring, we're creating happy neighborhoods where people aren't mad at the neighbor next door because of something they did. But it's also allowed me a lot of interaction with different members of not only the town board, the planning board, and other members in government in the town of Manlius, but also, with some of the trainings and things I've been to, just getting to know some of the other people who are involved in those kind of things within Onondaga County.
Well, that's good. I mean, you definitely have the connections and you have the experience. You're working with different people. That's phenomenal. I know that you've been very also vocal about talking about like the rising costs of economics and cost of living here in Central New York. When running for state assembly, are you going to be vocal in anything? Like, I guess, what's your take? You know what I mean? Like, what's going on in your area financially?
Yeah. So I think, one of the most important thing that is affecting everybody right now, and it's not just in Central New York, it's nationwide, is the cost to be able to afford to live. You look at 2019 dollars versus 2024 dollars, and what that amount of money gets you and your family. It's getting tougher and tougher. It's very easy to, put a handful of things in a grocery bag at Tops or at Aldi's, and all of a sudden you've spent $100, and you're like, what did I just buy?
I just looked up the other day.
Yeah. I mean, I have two teenagers who they see we bought food and they eat it, and we're like, hey, we're going to eat bologna the rest of the week. It's, it's one of those things where we've got mandates that are coming forward from not only state government, but, federal things that people are really struggling. And I see it the most when I'm knocking door to door. I'm talking to some of our older residents, right? Some of our seniors, or people who are on fixed incomes. And they're getting to a point where, we talk about it all the time that they have to decide between, this or that. But it's really getting to where you have people who lived in these communities for 60 plus years. Yeah. They've owned their house a long time, and they're worried they're going to lose it because they can't afford between keeping the lights on and putting food in their stomach. We need to be smart with the policies we make on a state level, and we need to consider that, not everybody has a deep pocketbook where they can continue to ride this wave. We have to make sure that what we're doing is something that's beneficial for them.
Thank you for that insight. That's definitely cool. It's very important to consider, the whole community, not just your focus. I realize that as community members, we kind of look at what's going on in our life, but it's the whole spectrum. It's the elders, it's the young folk, it's everyone in the middle in between. We all have these issues. Spoke that there needs to be an address on crime. Like, I'm a former New York City police officer. I'm not a police officer now. You've outspoken about crime. What's your take on bail reform? Can I ask you that?
Absolutely. So first off, thank you for your service. As a first responder, I have a deep level of respect for my brothers and sisters in blue. And I obviously take a moment to remember the sacrifices some of them made, like Officer Jensen and Deputy Husak. It's been really touching this year to see all of the houses in Central New York that have the yard signs showing their support for their families, but it doesn't give them their family members back. And crime is something that affects all of us, no matter our demographic, no matter what neighborhood we live in. Onondaga County has seen a unbelievable increase in car theft, in shoplifting. And one of the firsthand accounts I can speak of well is my wife works at Kohl's in Fayetteville, and regularly there is a Town of Manlius police car in Town Center Plaza. And it goes back and forth between Target and Kohl's. And it's an almost daily occurrence where people are just walking out with hundreds of dollars worth of merchandise. Yeah. And then, people wonder why my wife's store, as she says, is a mess. It's because the store has to absorb those costs. They can't hire staff when they're losing revenue. And so it affects everybody. But it's more than that. It's people not feeling safe walking out into their communities. I want to feel comfortable that if I let my girls go play a couple houses down or in the neighborhood next door, that I'm not worried something's going to happen to them. We need to feel confident and safe in our community. That really is the ultimate thing that we should have. And when we allow these things to happen where, criminals commit a crime and they're let back out with no recognizance, where we're hamstringing the capability of our law enforcement and our justice system to hold people accountable for it. It's got to change. It has to change from the top.
There's no accountability. Like the other day, I was in a Dollar General, and I'm asking myself, why am I still paying for things? As crazy as that might sound, because why I'm saying that, because like 3 waves of young youth just robbed the place, like different groups of youth. And I'm looking like, why am I paying for stuff? I mean, like it's a fleeting, joking moment, but like, it's almost like, why is that accepted normality? It's
right. And we talk about those rising costs. Part of what we're paying for is those losses those major companies are facing. Yeah. You can get into the whole thing about corporate greed and, CEOs getting paid millions and billions of dollars. But at the end of the day, when we allow crime to run rampant, we're going to end up paying more for those things because we have to eat those costs.
Yeah. Look, I love this county. I love this area. It's beautiful. Great place to live. I have children too. I also have daughters. I also have a son. Same breakdown, like demographic, like, 2 girls, 1 boy. But I would never let my girls out now in the street by themselves. I used to run around until like sundown, all the time, and no problem. Now I would never think about letting that happen. And I think that should change. I mean, don't get me wrong. We can't be harping on the past. We have to adapt to current times, but we still need to bring some of the good elements we had.
And for me, it's like growing up in the 80s, right? We were, you get that joking that, I like to claim that even though I technically am a millennial because I was born in 82, I like to claim I'm Generation X, but we were sent outside in the morning and my parents didn't worry about us. And the only rule was be home for dinner.
Yeah. Be home for dinner.
And we had a blast. And, I won't get into my whole opinion of, kids sitting in front of screens all day, but I think that taught me a lot of stuff. It taught me independence. It taught me to, make friends and build interpersonal relationships that, those are skills that these kids don't have nowadays. But I never once as a child thought about my safety. And where I lived, I'd ride my bike to Green Lakes. I'd ride my bike to Shopping Town Mall. I mean, that's a half-hour bike ride from where I grew up. And like you said, I wouldn't let my kids do that now. And I hate that I have to say that, but it's absolutely a fact.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if you get elected in the state assembly, like, what are you going to do to ensure that law enforcement has like resources to maybe help counter some of these issues we're facing, at least in our area? Like, let's focus on us for right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think bail reform as a whole needs to be redone, right? My opponent has said publicly that, maybe we made a little bit of a mistake.
A little?
And he spoke about, making changes. Well, where are those changes? They haven't happened. And I fully understand and can feel for the concept of bail reform in the first place, where we don't want people to sit in jail that aren't able to afford to get out. But on the other hand, we've swung the pendulum so far in that other direction that there's no recourse, and it needs to change. And I know that there are a number of other assemblymen, and I know that there's folks in the Senate that it's their number one priority. And we need to elect people that can make those changes. Otherwise, we're just going to let the criminals run the house, and that can't happen.
It's like it's a double-edged sword. Like, I grew up in Brooklyn in inner city housing projects. Grew up in a rough area, for the most part. If your friends or a relative, was to get incarcerated, the first thing you want is them to be out. That's just a natural human emotion, going through it. But in the same regard, there has to be accountability, because if someone breaks into my car and then they get let out the next day, and then why can't I break into my car the following day? And they do. So then there's no accountability. So like, there definitely has to be something has to be done. There has to be a balance. So at least that you're aware, of the spectrum, that it needs to be tweaked.
And the other side of that is we need to ensure that we have the resources in place to protect our law enforcement, right? That they're out there putting their lives on the line every single shift, and they don't know many times if they're going to come home to their families at night. I don't want to have to worry about that. I want to know that, those people who proudly take that oath are able to come home to their families just like we can.
Yeah,
it's very important.
Being law enforcement, you got skin in the game. The consequences of death. You know, with the
And
stock price.
I've seen it in EMS. You know, I had an incident years ago with a paramedic I used to regularly ride with, and we had a gentleman pull out a machete on us.
Mhm.
And lucky for us, there was a state trooper in there, and he grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and pulled me out of the way. But what would have happened if he wasn't there? And you see rising crime with fire and EMS.
Mhm.
Those things are vital to our community. And you know, I don't want people, you know, our volunteer services are affected too, right? Because if people are afraid to go participate in those things because of the fear of a crime, we're just causing a bigger problem for our region.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a beautiful area. You know, I love the area. You mentioned like Green Lakes. Like I love the natural, you know, resources, you know, the area as well. Do you have any take on the environment or like what's your policies or just, you know, from like a outsider looking in? Because like, seems like you have family ties. So what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, my family's called this area home for generations, and I can see why my ancestors came to this area and said, "Hey, we like it here. We're going to stay here."
Mhm.
And my family, for the most part, doesn't move away. They're all in this vicinity. There's a few
right.
that are in other states, but they're all
Close
basically in central New York. Yeah, and we're really. I've been all over the country for work and other things, and we're blessed in this region that we have the Finger Lakes, the Thousand Islands, the Adirondacks, the beautiful gorges and falls around Ithaca, and within just a few hours, if I want to, I can be in Toronto, I can be in
I love that.
Boston, I can be in New York City or Philly.
Yeah.
But I belong here. This is my area, and I am all for protecting our green spaces, ensuring that what we have here now we can pass along to our children and our grandchildren. You know, I'm proud of the fact that we've put a lot of effort into cleaning up Onondaga Lake.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I know Okra has done a great job at making sure that recycling happens and that we're making sure that we're being good stewards of our environment.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a lot better than when you and I were younger. But on the other side of that, it's another thing where policies are being made in Albany that are going too far. A good example is the electric school buses. Yes. Well, electric vehicles are great. They work great for many people I know. I know many people who own Teslas and Ford Lightnings and Ford Mustangs and all those electric vehicles that are out there. And for most people, it works. It's if you've got a short 15-20 minute commute to work, you're just going to the grocery store and the kids' soccer games and whatnot, that's fine. But when you're transporting our children, I think we need to take pause. I think that the forcing of school districts to start buying electric school buses by 2027 needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. We need to put a timeout on this and say, okay, let's look at this realistically. I talk to a lot of people, and I know, just here in my little circle of the world, my children attend Fayetteville Manlius School District, and they have 66 buses. They have a 10-year cycle that they expect these buses to last for. They run well. They have a good plan. Most engines now are fairly efficient and cleaner than they were 20 years ago, especially diesel motors. But when you look at these electric vehicles, electric school buses particularly, you have a limited range. You can't just quickly fill it back up, right? You've got to change that. The infrastructure is not there yet. Our grids struggle in this region on a warm day, right? When everybody's using their air conditioning. And I know in central New York, that used to be that we'd only use our air conditioning for, maybe 2 weeks a year, but it's changed over the last couple of years. And we had a very hot summer this year. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine what that's going to be like if we're putting all that additional strain on the system, right? Without any investment in infrastructure. And then the more important thing to me with the electric school bus thing is, in our effort to be green and to push this forward, we're putting 95% of that burden on the backs of taxpayers.
Yes.
Many people on the other side, many of the politicians in Albany that voted in favor of this have, they're frequently saying, well, there's $500 million available from NYSERDA. Okay. Now divide that by the number of school buses in New York State. And what does that come to? It's going to pay for a fraction of those school buses. They're significantly more expensive than a traditional school bus.
Not enough.
And not only that, but at a 5-year mark, you're going to have to replace the batteries if you're on a 10-year cycle. That's $50,000 to $60,000. And then, for a school district like mine or Liverpool or CNS, what you're going to end up having to do is you're also going to have to rebuild your bus garages. You're going to have to store those buses inside so that you maximize efficiency in our cold months, because no matter what anybody says, this is still Syracuse, right? We have cold, long winters. Winters. We need to be cognizant of that. I think that idea of electric school buses could be good down the road, but right now you're going to require school districts to have to buy more buses that are solely for after school activities. And that puts that burden again on those taxpayers that I talked about before that are fixed incomes and rising assessments, rising property and school taxes, and saying, do I even want to stay in New York anymore?
Yeah, it's rough. It's just frustrating. Like, why are you even asking yourself, should I even stay here? Look, it's what I don't like is that the left will lock onto the right side. Republicans don't want the electric school buses. They're bad for the environment. See, they don't want the electric school buses. They're bad people, which is not true. Totally not true. It's like, no, we want to be green, but let's not bankrupt. You just listed every reason why this would bankrupt or financially impact. So even if like your school district is rocking it, which it is, with this added on burden, maybe they're going to drop down. And what does that mean to everyday life? It means your kids are not getting a proper education by this mandate.
Correct. And what happens when we have to take those additional tax dollars that could go towards my children's education or resources in the arts and sciences, which we continue to cut?
Right.
So that they can afford to pay for these mandates.
Right. I mean, the same vein is that, when it comes to like being green and protecting this environment, we have a lot of rising industries coming to our area. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of good programs there. So I guess a lot of people in the area are saying, what are you going to do or do you have that in mind? Are you going to be in support of that, or are you non-support of that? Or like with that coming, are you going to at least have the green or the environment concerns to, protect our beauties, like Green Lake, so I can ride my bike there. So it's not a traffic zone.
Yeah. I mean, for one of the things that I as a member of the zoning board for the town of Manlius, we've had a couple of the solar farms in our town come before us. We've ensured that, they meet certain requirements, and when they fall within what they need to do, we've approved those. There, I believe, are 8 or 9 completed solar projects in the town of Manlius, which is pretty impressive. There was controversy with one of them, but aside from that, the residents of the town of Manlius have those options now where, they can at least try to get some green energy from that. I know that up to our north, up in Lowville and even out in Fenner, which is just outside of my district, outside the town of Casanova, the town of Fenner has windmills, and those produce some energy as well. I'm all for those things. I'm all for being prudent with the resources that we have available, but doing it in a wise way, right? And when you talk about, things that are obvious that we have here, one of the things that sticks out the most to me is that, with the CLCPA and the efforts for this push to green that the Democrats have, we're banning gas appliances in homes. In New York State, we sit on the largest reserve of natural gas on the entire planet. It's called the Marcellus Gas Shale. Most people don't realize that, right? But does it make sense to you, right? Just like producing oil in the United States, but instead we go buy it from our enemies, right? And that is a geopolitical nightmare. In New York State, we sit on usable natural gas that we can use to heat our homes, that we can use for other purposes. Yet the politicians in Albany say, nope, you can't do that. And then they're forcing these houses to be more expensive, because if I've got to build an electric house with a heat pump, right, and not have gas appliances and things like that, I'm going to spend more to build that house. And the homeowners associations are talking about that too. You're going to see a 15 to 25% cost in the new cost of building a home. That's unsustainable.
Yeah, not sustainable.
All for green.
Yeah. Well, thanks for giving some clarity on that topic. I appreciate it. It was very
Yeah.
thoughtful and thorough. Another hot topic on a lot of people's minds in the area is going to be like healthcare, and you have a unique perspective because you have like that healthcare IT background, and also having that rural and family ties generation. Any insight on what you might want to look for once elected to like help healthcare be more accessible to these more like rural areas, or just curious?
Yeah, absolutely. So healthcare is an important thing in my life in general. I mean, first off, like I said, I'm an EMT. I've seen firsthand some of the issues that arise from the opioid crisis, from the mental health strain that we have on our system.
Yeah.
We absolutely need to focus on addressing fentanyl. We absolutely need to put more resources into programs or departments like OPWDD, the offices for the aging, as our baby boomer population continues to grow. Currently, my family is assisting as my grandparents are getting older and need a lot more help around the home. They're 99 and 95.
Wow.
And 75 years of marriage too, which is pretty awesome.
That's
Something
pretty
to be proud
awesome,
of. But
yeah. Wow.
But in just helping them, I see how hard it is to find resources, right? My grandpa needs some help with some things, and to find the resources that are there, sometimes they're like, oh, it could be 2 months before we get you to somebody. And then I've seen friends who have children that are in crisis from mental health concerns, and there's not enough pediatric resources available. Another piece of healthcare that I find vitally important is you can look around New York State, and COVID affected about a quarter of the volunteer and paid staff in EMS in the state. They're gone, right? Either they got burnt out or they moved on to different things. And we don't have a backfill of that. Many of the seasoned paramedics I work with are in their 50s and 60s. They're not going to be around for a long time. And you don't see a lot of people that are going into those things. I'm proud of my ambulance agency, but I watch what's going on around in other agencies. North Shore Ambulance up on the north side of Oneida Lake closed earlier this year because they just weren't able to stay open.
Closed.
Multiple agencies around the state have closed over the last few years, and it's a growing problem. So one of the things that's been proposed in the past is making EMS an essential service in New York State. I'm very passionate about that. Something where it will actually protect it so that just like fire and EMS, that if you have, or fire and the police, if you have an emergency and you call, there's somebody on the other side of that can respond to you. If we don't address that, you're going to have people waiting. They may be having a heart attack or another emergency. And what if there's nobody to respond? That is completely unacceptable in my book.
Scary. That's a scary world to live in, and that's like the reality that we're facing. We're seeing that all across all first responders, just the lack of funding, lack of organization, lack of support, defunding, and don't have the resources. Like I had a friend, a buddy of mine who was a Arizona police officer, and he was like, if I call for help, right, just using Arizona, like he calls like, hey, I'm getting my head kicked in, I need backup. He has to wait 30 minutes for the closest responding officer to show up. And then after he gets beat up, he has to wait 45 minutes to an hour for an ambulance to take him to the hospital. So he was like, I'm done with that job. Those are very like exaggerated, examples, and hearsay, from like a friend from a friend,
Yeah.
But it's reality.
It's all over. And you look at the number of first responders that have lost their lives over the last couple years senselessly. The level of respect for police and fire and EMS that was once there is not. But those people, to me, anybody that does that, they're pillars of the community. They should have the utmost respect.
I mean, bare minimum, you should have a roof over your head.
Absolutely.
And have the resources. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Other focal points, from this electoral season is going to be about entrepreneurship and like small business development. So do you have any ideas on economic development? Is any part of that of your campaign or your platform that you want to discuss for some viewers who may not know where you hold or just your thoughts in general? Yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, I am director of operations for a company that actually formed out of Syracuse University and the Center State CEO's Tech Garden, called IMCON. Started as a different named company. We created basically a communication device that we'd be able to communicate anywhere on the planet. And we've been in multiple countries, multiple continents. We've got customers nationwide. So I primarily help people get access to the internet in rural and underserved communities. To me, access to the internet is just as important as having water and electricity. No person in today's world should not have access to the internet because it empowers, it builds up a community. I'll never forget, we brought internet to a community in Chile. And there's a video that we got made afterwards, and we were interviewing some of the people in this village. And it was cool because, like, yeah, you see, you know, where all of a sudden these kids, their phones, right? They'd have to go up on top of a hill to download an app, right? And they'd play games. Initially, one of the first things we would see is all these apps on these kids' phones were what was updating, right? Like Angry Birds and, you know, Candy Crush and that. But it was more that you could see the empowerment in the community where they were like, you know what? We can do this. We can speak to the outside world. We can bring in entertainment. We can talk to our community governments. And we take that for granted here in Central New York, right? Because we have, for the most part, not everybody has access to internet here, but for the most part, we're pretty accessible. Most of the rest of the world and a large part of this country, that's just not there. But what I was going to say is, in this video, the mayor of that village, her exact words were, "We now exist."
Wow.
And to me, that was like, it made everything I'm doing completely worth it, because that woman felt like her and her community were part of the rest of the planet. Up until that point, they weren't. And, you know, I say that as an entrepreneur. To me, I'm a natural born problem solver. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not I've worked at Upstate. I've worked at other places, and I'm not somebody who just, you know, does the same thing every day. I like having a problem put in front of me and how can I fix it? What resources do I need? Who do I need to work with? And how do I make that happen? Which certainly bodes well for the assembly. But more importantly, I like empowering people to be able to have an idea. So I've been a judge, and I've been an advocate up for Blackstone Launchpad and for the Tech Garden for new companies coming in that have an idea, and I help them vet it and say, okay, hey, are you considering this? Are you looking at your accounting? Are you looking at having the proper documentation and things like that? But the best part of that is hearing somebody's like excitement, right? Like, I have this idea for a business and I want to do it. And one of the things that I would like to be able to do, and I look at somebody like Dr. Desiato in my district, who is the superintendent for ESM. Yep. She's been a real champion of empowering her students. And it kind of came to me that one of the things I'd like to be able to do is work with our high school students, right? And not just with DECA, which is a program I went through, but, you know, why can't we have like high school level incubators where we encourage these kids to solve problems in their community? Yeah. And maybe at the same time, create a career for themselves. Absolutely. Or jobs. Obviously, one of the biggest things in my district, too, when it comes to economic development is Micron. Going to transform this entire region. I've been a champion of it since the beginning. I know that, you know, there are ads on television right now of people who've claimed they stood behind it the whole time and magically now are bringing jobs to Syracuse. But
yeah, I hate that.
I've watched all along as, you know, folks that I'm friends with on the county ledge and our county executive have had a vision. And that vision is something that this big company now believes in, and it's going to transform a region. And I talk in one of my commercials about how when I was a kid, growing up in ESM, most of my friends' parents either worked at Carrier or New Venture Gear, both of which really aren't here anymore. They're both shells of, well, New Venture Gear isn't even here, but Carrier is a shell of what it used to be. Right. And being a kid in the 80s and 90s, I watched thousands of people move away because we didn't have those roles here for their parents to stay here. So you start a school year with kids in your class, and next thing you know, they're off somewhere else. They're off somewhere else, yeah. And I don't want to see that. I want my kids to be able to graduate and not have to look at Austin or Atlanta, Tennessee. I mean, as beautiful as some of those places are, I want people to look at Central New York and go, I want to call that place home too. We're, you know, aside from the rising costs of housing we've had over the last couple of years, and part of that is just supply and demand, we are relatively affordable.
Yes, for now.
Compared to other places. Now, as our tax burden continues to rise, that that makes that less so. And I do everything I can to address that. But I think it's important for us to empower our small businesses. I proudly shop local, buy local as often as I can. I have a little coffee shop. I shouldn't say a little, but a coffee shop that I regularly attend in the village of Manoa. That they're the only place I buy coffee from. I have vendors and people that I will only go to because they're local and that's what they do. And I know I'm not only supporting their family, but the people that they employ. And I think the more we do that, I think that really helps build the strength of this community. And the great thing about Syracuse is it's always been about neighbors helping neighbors. We're a strong knit small community, even though it's a county of roughly 500,000 in the metropolitan area. You and I both know. I mean, how many places do you go where you can't go 5 feet without seeing somebody you know? My wife and I compete when we go to the fair of who knows more people. But it's great. That's the best part about living here. It's not like a New York City or Atlanta.
I love that big city, small town feel. You know, like you live in the city, but you have that small town, quality of life. And I think that's on everyone's top of mind. It's like we want to preserve. We also want to develop and grow. Like we want resources. We want jobs. We want infrastructure. We want first responders. But we also want to hold on to what we fell in love with the area, why we call this our home.
Yeah. But one of the other things that we have to do with that is that I'd ask Central New Yorkers to be optimistic, right? All too often in this area, we've been promised something that doesn't follow through. But I think if we're optimistic as a region, right, and we believe in things and we do what we can to, on our own personal level, encourage that growth, encourage that community, this whole region will transform.
Yeah.
Not just Micron, but, if we can all work together, we've talked for 20 years about Interstate 81 changing, and it's finally changing. Pros and cons to that, right? But it's happening. And with that's going to be some major changes completely aside from Micron that we just have to be less pessimistic, right? That Syracuse chip where we're like, that's not going to happen. We've got to think forward, think for a better future.
Well, what I've seen and what I've realized is that a lot of the right side leaning politicians don't get the media coverage or the airtime that they should deserve. I'm not saying that has happened in your election, but with this neutral, fair, unbiased platform, is there anything that you would want to address or hear for the voters or the constituents back home? There's one thing that's not getting the attention on your current election that you would want them to hear now.
Yeah, I think I want people to know that a lot of times politicians just talk. But my background, my experience reflects how deeply ingrained I am into my community, how much I care about other people, whether it's my church community or the ambulance or other things that I'm involved in. I truly am here for every single person. It doesn't matter your political ideology, race, creed, religion, any of that, right? Everybody is a citizen of this region. And we should be able to all work together. And I want people to know, okay, yeah, I'm a Republican. Great. But, I don't want them to be afraid to come to me where they think I'm just going to brush them off. I want people to know that one of the most important things about the role in the assembly is it's the highest level of local government, right? Mm-hmm. It is your lifeline between your personal life and state government. And if there is something that you need done, I want you to know that you're going to call my office and they're going to be able to solve that problem. And if they're not, I want you to personally reach out to me. I'm not going to just show up and, go off to Albany if I'm lucky enough to be elected and you're not going to see me till election day. I love going out. I love the door-to-door part. I've knocked on over 9,000 doors. I truly love talking to people. I realize a good number of those are people who weren't home and I leave something behind, but there's not a corner of this district I haven't walked in. I'm blessed to know a ton of people, but it's been great getting to know so many other people and people from all political persuasions. I've had people who hear I'm a Republican and want to slam the door in my face. And then I say, hey, can I just have a minute to talk to you? And more often than not, those are some of the best conversations I have because people take the time to not just look at political parties, but at the person, right? The person that's in this role, just like any other role that you vote for, should be somebody that you feel, if you have that problem, that you can reach out to them. And I know that's harder on a federal level. Yeah. It's harder, with the governor and things like that. But you should expect your assemblyman to be somebody that is approachable and involved in your community. I plan to be involved in events at school districts. I plan to go out and regularly knock on doors in the district if I'm elected. And not just to, continue. It's more, if there's a problem, I want to hear on it firsthand. I don't want somebody to just explain to me what that problem is. I want to hear from the residents that affects the most. So I think that's the part that I want people to know the most.
So basically, if you get elected, you're not going to disappear in some ivory tower and just be gone in Albany and you never be heard again. And then it's just election time again, and you come back around. You genuinely are for the community. You're here. You're
absolutely
accessible.
Yeah, I couldn't lay my head down at night if that was how I was. I could not do that.
All right. Well, we're coming to the end of the show. Of course, I want to just give you opportunity just to speak or any other topic or anything else that you wanted to address before we end the show. But so far it's been wonderful. I think that you're definitely qualified in your ties and your community connections and your deep understanding of both rural and IT and just entrepreneurship makes you well-rounded to be best suited for this role. Because just the electric school bus is just one blaring example of you don't look at these small little details which you're paying attention to. So, you have my vote of confidence. But anything else that you wanted to add today before we break?
I think it's just important that we hear over and over that this is a very important election. But to me, one of the most important things we have as Americans is our ability to vote. Mm-hmm. Right? It's your ability to state your opinion on something, to choose who you think is going to best represent you. And I would ask people that are watching this that if you like what you've heard here, if you're placing your confidence in me, if you could please share my message, whether it's on your social media or with your friends, with your neighbors, with your friends from church or work. It's important that we go out and vote. And, as people say, I'm fighting an uphill battle. I'm fighting a man who's been there for 16 years. He's a very nice gentleman. But we need somebody who's going to fight for us in our community and really right the ship so that we can ensure that we can continue to live here without having to look elsewhere. Well said. Well, good luck on your campaign. Thank you for being on the show. First of all, I wanted to say a big thank you to Momentous Media Group for officially sponsoring the second season of the Salt City Index. I'm your host, Mo Moodie. I want to say thank you to Tim Kelly, who's running for State Assembly. Great to have you on the show. And like always, tune into the next episode where we'll be interviewing other influencers in the area. This is an unbiased, neutral platform that actually allows influencers to speak their mind. Thank you, Tim, for being on the show. Thanks, Mo.